And we're back. So anyway, due to the Halloween holiday, which will be coming up in a couple of weeks, what fears do you think the turtles have?
Well, let's see. Why don't we start with the old cartoon real quick? The old cartoon, their fears were pretty well pronounced for the most part, because in Leonardo's case, we had an entire episode of his biggest fear being like not being a good leader and leading the turtles into traps or messing up because it's like his fault being unable to decide. And another episode dealt with him having a fear of snakes. Well, you can bridge off from there.
Yeah, Michelangelo, there's no actual episodes dedicated to fear unless you count episodes where he is dealing with horror. I guess the only one that really did have a fear was probably what is Michelangelo good for, where he's the only one who has to save his brothers or his companions rather, or pizza being outlawed.
Yeah, stuff like that. Or the pizza eating him. Giant pizza monster after him. And then Donatello's fears. Well, like we were thinking, Donatello really does want his like scientific genius to be world renowned and everything. So I would think his biggest fear would be being ridiculed or recognized as a big failure and unable to do anything in the scientific field at large. Like to never be known or respected as a genius.
Like that he's doomed to create all these projects that keep blowing up in his face, and or if they do work, they only work sporadically.
And then the hardest turtle to determine is Raphael, the old school version, because they never really dealt with what would particularly scare him. I mean, he gets scared of stuff like anyone else does, but it's nothing particular. They never gave him a particular phobia or anything.
Raph has no fear. That's what I was going to say. I completely forgot what I was going to say.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he does get scared when his companions are essentially being injured or could potentially die. Like, he was as concerned as everybody else when Donatello got electrocuted and became the Dark Turtle for that one episode.
Yeah. But they never really dig into him that much. It's interesting, though, because people might say whatever about the old cartoon, but Raphael was still the tough guy, basically as tough as could be allowed back in the, campier version. He was a bit cranky, he was very smart-assy and rude, and he was, like, the tough guy of the group, more or less. It's just, they didn't, it wasn't to the point where he was bowing against his brothers. He wasn't, like, questioning Leo, unless, of course, he was being a smartass about it, but he wasn't all out fighting or challenging him. So, people might think that the cartoon is very childish and goofy back then, but Raph was a bit of the tough guy of the show. He just wasn't a loner.
Yeah, and it's not till the Red Sky season that he becomes more rude and more battle-hardened.
Are we talking about 2003 or 80s?
In the 80s cartoon.
It sounds like she's talking about the 2003 right now. I have no idea. I can't talk about too much about the past ones because I really didn't watch too much of the past ones.
Well, they don't dig too deep because, like, Leonardo would be afraid of snakes in that just one episode. I thought it would bother him in any other future episode.
Or Splinter being afraid of cats.
Yeah. And that's one thing. They did dig into that the old cartoon Splinter was afraid of cats, and what does Shredder do? Send a cat April O'Neil after him.
Maybe it's his ratty instincts to fear kitty cats.
Yeah, that was a funny thing. And it was in the beginning of the episode, some random little kitty cat that just wandered in the sewers, and that freaked the hell out of Splinter.
Well, like I said, maybe it's his ratty instincts to fear a kitty cat.
Yeah.
Kitty cat.
And then if we go, I'm not sure there's much to discuss about the 80s cartoons, since of course they didn't dig that deep into the series, but...
And then the 2003 series, which had lots of bases from the Mirage series, of course, had episodes dedicated to fears of the turtles. Like, often it was Michelangelo getting overblown on the horror aspect of things, like that one episode of Notes of the Underground where he kept saying, like, "Oh my god, we shouldn't do this because this happens when you do this," and
yeah, so that's easily his biggest fear. All his horror movie monsters coming to life and coming after him.
And also they fear that he actually is truly a failure.
And then, of course, the bigger one is Leonardo with his extreme fear of leading his family to failure and everything.
Yes. Like they have an entire season dedicated.
And yes, the entire season to dark failure. I like the part he actually snapped at Splinter. Everyone was like, "Oh no, you didn't."
Well, yeah, he had been bottling up his pain for a while, or his fears, and he thought he could handle them on his own, and it ends up really backfiring. And there were even a couple of times where it was pointed out to him that, yeah, you need to let this out, or else.
Yeah, and of course, Karai stabbed Leo in the spirit, so to speak. But it's just so weird, so awkwardly. I mean, I know censorship and all that stuff, but it's like it looked like he was stabbed in the front or whatever, and yet like the little like back of his shell was chipped. It's like, how does that work, or what the hell? It's just so weird how they. It's like, okay, we gotta make this episode have impact. We must show that Karai stabbed Leo, but we can't show it and we can't specify exactly where, but make it look like. And he even passed out, and he just got back up later on, like if nothing happened. It's just so weird how they did that.
Yes, and the whole thing really bugged him about the fact that they had to sacrifice their lives, or had to even come to that choice in order to defeat the Shredder. So it was mainly because he was saying, if I was a better leader, this wouldn't have happened.
And then the turtle spear is also, it's kind of similar to that, about the family going down if he's not there.
Yeah, in the episode The Darkness Within, they all had, like, their fears confronted with them, or their greatest fears confronted with them, like, with Michelangelo, his greatest fear was betrayal, as in those who cared about would betray him. And in this case, the first person he sees is Leonardo. But in Leonardo's case, we kind of see it's kind of like a Groundhog Day event, where if he has like one vision and then he dies and then he wakes up again and he gets the same vision over again, but in a different form. And we don't really see what happens to the others, or how they are expecting their things, but I can imagine like maybe Donatello like witnessing Angel's death, which we see, and then it could have gone on to someone else like April or Mikey or Casey.
I remember people complaining about that, like Donatello being scared over Angel's death, even though she's a character he didn't really interact much with.
Well, because he did consider her a friend and ally, so. But yeah, I would have been having more impact, like maybe seeing him witness Leo dying and not being able to prevent it, Splinter dying and not being able to prevent it, which, of course, we see later in Back to the Sewers, where Splinter is vaporized in front of him. I even wrote a fanfic about that. Plug, plug, plug.
Hey, that's my line.
Well, Donnie, we saw a double dose, and the episode, same as it never was, we get to see him being afraid that because he wasn't there, like, everything went down, basically, because he wasn't there. And then the episode Bad Day was also a nightmare that because since he never thought to, I guess, better secure the signals from the shell cells, Bishop was able to find them that way, and all hell broke loose there. So again, it was like his fault. He thought it was his fault and everything. I was so careless.
Essentially, his fear, much like Leo's, is a fear of failure. It's a fear that it was a fear of people, everyone he cares about, everyone he considers a friend or family, like meeting a gruesome demise, and that kind of gets expanded upon, that his fear includes being the direct cause of that.
And then finally, if you remember, the entire season of Back to the Sewers was again him putting the pressure on his shoulders that it will be his fault. He feels if Splinter never gets recovered, he puts all the blame on himself. So
because when Viral was aiming at his brothers and his father, it was essentially to punish him for outwitting her. And what better way to punish him than to take away the things he cares about most, which is his family.
Yeah. So Donnie basically got a triple dose of that, if you notice.
And if it had just been his brothers who were destroyed, it would have killed him to try and bring them back. Because there was no way he could have been able to stand up to Cyber Shredder on his own.
And then finally, in Raph's case, that episode did show the one about him being afraid of his anger turning him into what he fears most, which would be like a Shredder, basically, like evil version of the Shredder or something. If his anger and rage would continue to endanger the family.
Going back to Donnie slightly, I noticed kind of like an unspoken fear, which is a fear of being left behind.
Is that in the 2003 one?
And I see this definitely in the 2012 Donnie too, except the fear of being left behind is kind of more Mikey's thing, but Donnie has a fear of being left behind in a different sense, which is the fear that his brothers will excel in ninjutsu and he will be left behind in the dust.
So moving into 2012, yes, of course Don's biggest fear at this point would also be losing April and, never being in love with her. In this case, now that April's actually angry at them, never seeing them again, that's his biggest fear, of never being with her or her never speaking to them ever again and all of that.
Yeah, so you sort of see that. It's not blue screen yet, but it's definitely leaning that direction. When you see him, 1 second that it focuses on him after Raph says, "Let her go, man, she needs her space." You just see him look up and he's has this really torn look on his face. And it's leaning towards blue screen.
And then, of course, Don, again, this version puts himself weight on his shoulders. He wants to be, responsible for rescuing April's father at first. Now he wants to be responsible for finding and turning his father back to normal. And now he also wants to, of course, cure Timothy. So he puts a lot of that on himself. So his biggest fear is failing all of that and failing April.
And we know in previous incarnations that Donnie has actually had a bad habit of treating eating and sleeping as optional. When he's really focused on something, he will forgo sleep. He will not eat. Remember the 2003 series where they actually, in Back to the Sewers, where they were commenting that he hasn't eaten and slept for days or something.
Yeah, it was basically locked up in his lab and everything.
I hope that doesn't come back to bite him in this version. We haven't seen him do that yet, but fans have definitely pointed out that is a probability. I remember reading one fanfic that was based off after the invasion of the Squirrel Noids, where all the turtles are together in Leo's room, and Donnie stops by Leo's room for a moment, and Leo kind of is waiting for Donnie to come in and join them, and instead Donnie just goes to his room and grabs a blanket or something and then goes back to the lab. And
well, of course, amongst all the other thousands of fanfics of Donnie and April professing their love to each other.
But I hope that if April does reject him, she lets him down gently, not the "I just don't feel the same way" or something like that.
We're just gonna move on to Leo, but I think it's still early in the series, but he probably has the same fear of being a failure as a leader, of letting his team down, of everyone suffering or whatever because of some wrong decision he made and things like that.
One of his brothers dying, or he makes a mistake and one of his brothers pays the ultimate price for that mistake. Yes.
And of course, Karai being irredeemable.
Well, yeah, that. Because he essentially did betray his family's trust when he started putting faith that Karai was good, even though April and Raph were saying you shouldn't trust her, and even Karai was saying, "Yeah, I'm not trustworthy."
Yeah, I like that. She's bad news. Yeah, I am.
Yeah, and Donnie even feeling very offended that that Leo would not even trust him enough to even tell him about that.
Then, of course, Raphael, we blatantly saw that he had a fear of bugs in the cockroach episode. I just hope that it doesn't become one of those episode fears. I hope that if there's other episodes with other bugs, and I don't mean just the cockroach coming back. I mean any other episode that deals with bugs, I hope they still make them, like, freaked out about them.
Well, we sort of do with the Parasectia, where he sees the stinger sticking out of Leo's arm, and he looks like he's about to throw up.
So that's basically Raph's fear so far, unless they expand more.
And Mikey has like all the childish fears, such as,
well, all the horror stuff, aliens coming under his bed or something.
Well, Shredder being there, because, they had like that one time where Raph throws him while he's asleep, and he wakes up and goes, "Ah, Shredder's here!"
Yeah, that's another thing we also felt with Splinter being afraid of Shredder killing the turtles. Epic nightmare sequence there. They really do a lot of Freddy Krueger references with the whole Shredder scratching the walls with his claws and everything. That was interesting.
Yeah, and I think Mikey's definite fear is also being the fear of being left behind, because in the Parasectia episode, all his brothers fall one by one, starting with Leo, then Raph, and then Donnie, and he's the only one left, and like right before Donnie turns, he says, like, I'm not good with the sciencey stuff, and then after Donnie turns, he gets bitten, so he of course freaks out, like, oh my god, my brothers depend on me, and I'm not no good with this kind of thing. And he still manages to do it.
Okay, well, because I couldn't really say anything about the 80s or 2003 ones, but 2013 fears. For Mikey, it's losing pizza. Like you said, the childish fears like monsters, blah, blah, blah. Like, even they talk about how in the comic series, whenever he watches a horror movie by himself, he has a fear of, like, the monsters coming out and being real. Another fear of Mikey is not being able to name a villain or an item. Okay, for Raph, it's obviously the bugs. He has a fear of bugs. What did I say earlier was Raph's fear?
I don't know.
Maybe losing his turtle. There's one of his fears.
Losing Spike.
Yeah, losing Spike. Leo's. Yeah, that's the one I was saying. Losing his brothers, and losing Splinter, losing his brothers. Yeah, and then Leo is his Space Invaders or Space whatever show gets canceled.
Well, they ended that in the Booyaka Showdown. They said he was watching the final episode or the series finale of it.
Oh, I wouldn't have noticed, but that's his biggest fear probably, of the show being canceled or over completely.
It's over completely, and he's pretty much moved on from it.
Well, you never know.
And then, his fear is obviously failing at being a leader, losing his brothers, etc., etc.
And Donatello?
Oh, I almost forgot Donnie. Donnie, losing his love of his life, his non-existent love of his life, April, and breaking his bow staff.
Well, his bow staff has been repeated many times, so it's more like not quite a given, but it's not something that happens every single time. But we know it does happen, even if it's just a joke. Like, I hope they do something like they did in Back to the Sewers, where they had all the characters, like, undergo a kind of a graduation exam where they become Chunin from Genin. Yeah, except instead of Mikey failing, it's it's kind of hinted that maybe the person was Mikey, but it turns out to be someone else entirely.
I'm not sure if they hinted this in the show, but I know, like in the Mirage comics, they would always say that of all the turtles, Michelangelo was like the most gifted athlete, and he would probably be the most badass fighter if he actually did like focus and take it seriously.
Yeah, they say that in the Tales of the Turtle Lair as well. The Splinter tells all introduces each of his sons by name. Like he says, Leo is his eldest and the most skilled at ninjutsu, and it would be better if he followed his own instincts rather than the instincts of this Captain Ryan character he's so fascinated by. Raphael is his second eldest and strongest son, and it would be, I just wish he would think more. Donatello is the third eldest, and the most intelligent, but as much as he wishes Raphael would think more, he wishes Donatello would think less. And then it goes to Michelangelo, his youngest, and he said he could be the most skilled out of all his brothers combined, if only he would focus. So, yeah, if they did have like an episode coming up where they said the turtles are going to be graduating from being Genin and becoming Chunin now, they can probably, everyone would automatically assume it's Mikey who didn't make the cut, and then it turns out that it might be someone else. But like I said, Donnie's fear of being left behind is kind of different in this case, because it's more like, yeah, his brothers would excel in ninjutsu and he will remain behind. Because even in Tales of the Turtle Lair, he has like one moment where where he admits that he feels like no matter how hard he trains, he just can't keep up.
Yeah, we'll have to see how that goes, because that is a point. Although it's weird, though, because he is kind of a pacifist, but, I mean, he likes to kick ass, though. He still likes to show off he's a good fighter. He still considers himself a trained ninja warrior. He still has a lot of fun blasting things using Metalhead. It's like, I don't know, he's not that proactive as, say, Raphael would be, like, let's jump in and kick some ass, but, I mean, he still does enjoy being a fighter, just maybe not to that extent.
Yes, and I think the fact that he is not really acknowledging the fact that he is a pacifist is holding him back. Since he hasn't embraced that part of himself, he's doing things that aren't sitting well with him, and that's going to really affect him later on.
And as for Splinter, that's another thing I just thought of right now. That's another big fear that he has, as well as, you know, fear of cats, fear of Shredder, attacking his sons, whatever. But one thing that also came to mind right now is fear of like what's going to happen to Miwa now. Now that he finally saw her and find out what happened to her, that's a big fear. As in, what will happen to her? What will become of her? Will she always hate him? What's going to happen the next time they see her? That's something that's got to be messing him up inside. If of course the cartoon chooses to dig deep into that.
They won't do anything. I swear they're not going to do anything till like the last so many episodes.
Yeah.
If they keep their whatever it's called,
The routine
or their habit that they wait till the last minute to do things like saving the father last so many episodes. So,
and that's kind of the negative side of like how you can't change status quo too much, because there's no reason later on for Karai not to be redeemable and actually join them and fight side by side with them, other than the fact that, well, we don't want them to. It's just about the turtles. We don't want Karai there as a fifth turtle. No. And so there must be some excuse for her to still be bitter or evil or whatever, you know?
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of this anime I saw called Salty Ray. Essentially, they have an event called the Skyfall. In this event, that a bunch of people died, and it was believed the main character's young daughter also died in this event, but he is so dead sure she's alive. And this one girl named Rose Anderson shows up, and she doesn't have any memory from before that event. And they keep laying all these hints that she could actually be this guy's the main character's missing daughter. And then when she finally is confronted with it, she's like, oh no, that can't be possible, that isn't true. And yet she has like all these side memories that she doesn't know where she got them from. But she remembers things from her childhood that she she doesn't really understand where she got them, and then finally at the end he says, "Okay, I will accept the fact I'm your daughter, but I'm going to remain Rose and."
Weird thing is that Karai's life basically screwed. She won't have like a normal life. She's either gonna be living in bad guy headquarters or running around with ninjas, or she'll be living in the sewers with mutant turtle brothers. So her life as a normal Japanese American girl is basically screwed.
Yeah,
Won't exactly be dealing with going to homework like high school stuff or whatever.
yeah, so I can kind of see her, certainly, if she does accept the fact that Splinter is her father, she can say, "But I cannot be Miwa anymore. I am Karai."
So I think this kind of wraps. I don't know if you have any other thoughts on the turtle spheres, but this kind of wraps up for this particular section here. The one thing we do want to give are any updates. It's kind of difficult. I do believe the last episode we did mention a lot of the season 2 big things that we're expecting, like Casey Jones and Mutagen Man and the Ice Cream Kitty and stuff like that. But in the world of comics, I just found out about this epic crossover they're going to be doing in January. Because if you know, IDW Comics not only does Turtles, they also do all kinds of other old school favorites like the Ghostbusters. Like what? Oh yeah, yes, like My Little Pony. But also, stop it. But also, like Ghostbusters.
Powerpuff Girls.
Yes, Powerpuff Girls and Ghostbusters and stuff like that. And well, the main thing is
Powerpuff Girls. Don't forget the Powerpuff Girls.
yes, Powerpuff Girls. Well, the main thing is, in case you guys are wondering, what does this have to do with the Turtles? Is there's going to be apparently some kind of crossover featuring the X-Files, in which I guess they find files or something that tells them that something causes, like, I guess, genocide in the world, so they gotta find out where this is coming from, and they decide to check out urban legends, which include these group of people that claim to chase and capture ghosts, which might sound familiar, mutant turtles running in the sewers, which of course we know what they are, and alien robots that transform into vehicles. So yes, there will be a crossover as the X-Files meet up with the Ghostbusters.
And 3 little girls that can fly around and ponies.
I don't think it's gonna go that far, but
Magical
yes,
ponies.
okay, stop. They'll be meeting the Ghostbusters. They'll be meeting the Transformers, and they'll even be meeting. They stop that, and they'll be meeting the Turtles too. So I'll be interested to see how that works and how weird that is.
When does it come out, Mark?
Yeah, well, if IDW had them rights, but yeah.
When does it come out, Mark?
It's gonna start around January.
January? Oh boy!
Yeah, I just don't know how they're gonna fit that in continuity. Are they ever gonna mention that, like in the regular comics? Hey, remember that time we met them? What's her name? Sculder and Molly, them weird guys. Yeah, Scully and Mulder. Remember when we met them? That's weird because they did have a weird. There was a weird crossover called Infestation last year. It was Infestation Part 2, because when they made Part 1, they didn't have the Turtle comics yet. But in Part 2, I guess the Shizulu-type monsters attacked the Turtles, Transformers, G.I. Joe, whatever else, But it was a pretty self-contained story. The monsters attacked the Turtles, but the Turtles never actually met, like, the Ghostbusters, Transformers, etc. So it was pretty self-contained. It was never mentioned again. Even if it is mentioned again, it could just be like, hey, we saw them monsters in the sewers. It doesn't directly say, hey, we met, the Ghostbusters or whatever. So I don't know how they're going to do this X-Files one, how they're going to, I don't know, unless it's like a weird story where they, like, study the foot ninjas or something and never come into contact with the Turtles themselves, since the Turtles hide in the shadows or whatever. But I don't know. We'll have to see how this works out in January. But I mean, no offense to fans of X-Files, I personally don't care much about them, but I would at least buy the issues that involve the Ghostbusters and the Turtles just to see what's up, because that's interesting.
And?
What?
And?
Oh, and we'll be sure to blog about it, so
No.
read it. No, what? And what?
With My Little Pony.
Yes, Little Ponies. But basically, that's it, because everything else I think you guys know by now, including the live-action movie. There hasn't been much new information there, so to speak. We know about Megan Fox and stuff, so. So anything else to say, Venka, I guess, to wrap up this epic podcast?
Not this time, but I hope you guys check back with us next time for when we are reviewing episode 9, The Gauntlet, and episode 10, Panic in the Sewers.
Yep, especially the Gauntlet, which is probably one of the most epic episodes of the season. Yeah. Except maybe for the season finale, but yeah, this is the big one, guys. The Turtles meet the Shredder face to face.
As many of you listeners probably know, Mark Rodriguez, Paige, and I all have our own blogs. My blog is TMNT Reviews 2012. And I will have the link below. And Mark Rodriguez, he does the blog of Epic Randomness, and his blog will also be linked with this. And do not forget Don Lefore and her reviews.
Yes, and also be sure to watch our channels. Venka has her channel, and we have our own channel, and Paige has her own channel too. If you're interested in loot crates and other random things that might pop up in her channel, just keep checking it out.
Cricket. Right now, it's just cricket. Till I actually get the next loot crate or I find something to do. Maybe Ninja Do games.
And also remember, we have our own email. Feel free to contact us anytime. Our email is called inahalfcast@gmail.com. Please feel free to drop a line. We'd love to hear from you.
Yes, and again, we invite you to, if you want to help us out with editing the audio and video for these episodes, or if you want to join us also.
Comment.
To discuss the Turtles in one of our podcasts, drop us a line. Let us know.
Comment below, or wherever we're going to post this. Email us.
And we'd be happy to read your email on air.
Ooh. Fan mail.
Yep, there you go. We will answer fan mail.
Yes, we love any artwork. If you have any fanfics or suggestions for the podcast, please feel free to drop us a line. Until then.
Okay, audience, calm down. I could hear you screaming and hollering. Shh, just calm down a little bit. Sit back down in your chairs. You don't have to scream and jump up and down. Calm down.
So until then, I am Venka, the Lavender Ninja.
And this is Mark Rodriguez, the Orange Ninja.
And Paige, the Pink Ninja.
Should be called the Pink Ninja of Mischief.
See.
The Pink Cat, the Ninja of Mischief.
Meow. Great timing for that one.
Okay, well, see you all next time, guys. And until next time, have some more pizza on us.
Sayonara.
Adios.
Yes, adios.
Amigos.